They say silence is peaceful, until it's painted in red and blue. That night, my quiet ranch glowed under the pulse of police lights, the colors washing over the fields like a storm warning. 3 patrol cars sat on the gravel, engines humming, officers stepping out one by one. I set my coffee mug on the porch rail and walked forward, the crunch of my boots the only sound between us. The lead officer rested his hand near his belt, not threatening, but close enough to make a point. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity on this property," he said. "Possible trespassing. We'll need to see some ID." I nodded slowly, keeping my hands visible as I reached for my wallet. "My name's Marcus Chen," I said evenly. "I own this ranch. Might I ask who made that call?" He flipped through a small notepad. Caller identified herself as Linda Hale, president of the Birchwood Commons HOA. Said someone unauthorized was occupying the land. A faint smile tugged at my lips. Linda Hale. Of course. I knew exactly who she was, and she had no idea who I really was. "This should be interesting," I muttered. It started with a knock that didn't sound like a knock. It sounded like a demand. I opened the door to find a woman in her 50s, pressed blazer, clipboard in hand like a weapon. Her smile was tight, her eyes sharper than the sun that morning. "Good morning," she said briskly. "I'm Linda Hale, president of the Birchwood Commons Homeowners Association. We need to discuss your violations." I leaned on the doorframe, squinting. "Violations? You might be mistaken, this property isn't under any HOA." Her lips tightened. "That's where you're wrong. Birchwood Commons has expanded its jurisdiction. Any property within 1 mile of our community borders is now required to comply. You'll need to register immediately." I couldn't help but chuckle. "That's not how HOAs work, ma'am. You can't just annex land because you feel like it." She thrust a thick folder toward me. "Your fence is the wrong color. You have unauthorized livestock. And that barn, don't even get me started on that barn." "Ma'am," I said, my patience thinning. "This is private property. You need to leave." Her face flushed. "We'll see about that," she snapped. "I know people." Then she turned and stormed off down the driveway, heels stabbing the gravel. Something told me that wasn't the last I'd see of her. Within days, it started. Fake violation notices stapled to my gate. Bogus letters claiming I owed thousands in fines. She even left voicemails, thinly veiled threats disguised as reminders. So I did what any rational man would do. I installed cameras. Every corner of the ranch, every fence post, every entry. Night vision, audio recording, the works. It didn't take long before she got sloppy. One morning, I caught her past the fence line, phone out, taking photos of my horses. "Ma'am," I called, loud enough for the cameras to hear, "you're trespassing." She smiled like a cat that thought it owned the barn. "These horses aren't registered with the HOA Livestock Committee," she said. "That's a $500 fine per day." I sighed. "There is no committee, and you have no jurisdiction here. Leave now or I'll have to call the police." She laughed. "Go ahead. Sheriff Collins is my brother-in-law." I didn't call, not yet. Instead, I documented everything. Every notice. Every photo. Every step she took on my land. Because what she didn't know was who she was really dealing with. See, I wasn't just some ranch owner with a nice patch of land. By day, I was the senior vice president of Everstead Holdings, the very company that managed Birchwood Commons HOA contracts. In other words, the HOA that Linda Hale thought she ruled? I signed her checks. And that's how we got here, to the flashing lights on my driveway. The officer returned from his car, eyes scanning the screen of his tablet. "Mr. Chen, looks like you're the legal owner. Sorry for the confusion." He hesitated. "But it appears Ms. Hale made a false emergency report. Would you like to press charges?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Let's do this properly." I walked to the porch, grabbed my laptop, and opened a folder labeled HOA Shenanigans. "Here's everything you'll need," I said, turning the screen toward him. Footage of trespassing. Audio of her threats. Photos of fake fines and violation slips. 20 minutes later, the officers had seen enough. Their expressions had gone from confusion to anger. "This is solid evidence," one said quietly. Another nodded. "Would you like to file for harassment and trespassing?" "Not yet," I replied. "Let me make a call." I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Janet? It's Marcus Chen. Bring Richard from HR. We've got a situation with one of our contracted HOA board members, Linda Hale. Yes, she just filed a false police report against me." There was a pause on the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "We'll be there in 30 minutes, Janet said. "I'm so sorry, Marcus." Half an hour later, 2 cars pulled up to the ranch gate. Janet and Richard stepped out, both in crisp business suits. And between them, unbelievably, was Linda. They'd told her it was an urgent HOA meeting. Her face froze when she saw the police cars. Then she spotted me, standing beside the lead officer. "What is this?" she demanded. "Why am I here at this man's property?" Janet stepped forward, her tone icy. "Ms. Hale, are you aware that Mr. Chen is the senior vice president of Everstead Holdings, the company that manages Birchwood Commons?" Color drained from Linda's face. That's impossible." Richard's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You've been harassing a property owner outside your jurisdiction, filing false reports, and misrepresenting HOA authority. That's misconduct, and criminal." Linda stammered. "I was just doing my job. The board voted to expand jurisdiction." "No, they didn't," Janet interrupted sharply. "You acted alone. You abused your role to intimidate homeowners." The lead officer stepped forward. "Ms. Hale, you filed a false police report, a misdemeanor. You wasted law enforcement resources. You'll be cited for false reporting and harassment." Linda's confidence cracked. "This is ridiculous. My brother-in-law is the sheriff." "Former sheriff," the officer corrected. "He retired 3 years ago." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Then Richard spoke again. "Effective immediately, you are terminated from your position. Everstead Holdings is cutting all ties. You'll also be personally liable for any legal fees incurred by Mr. Chen." Her voice broke. "You can't do this. I've served this community for 8 years. The community," Janet replied coldly, "deserves leadership that follows the law." Linda's clipboard slipped from her hand and hit the ground with a hollow thud. For the first time, she looked small. Deflated. The officers handed her a folded citation. "You'll receive your court date by mail. Do not come within 500 feet of this property." As they escorted her to the car, she muttered something about ungrateful neighbors and no one appreciating her vision. But it was over. Her kingdom, her illusion of control, had collapsed. Janet turned to me. "Marcus, we'll review everything she touched. I expect we'll be reversing quite a few of her policies." I nodded. "Just make sure the next board president understands what authority actually means." When the cars pulled away, the lights faded. The night returned to stillness. My horses grazed in the distance, unregistered, unbothered, blissfully unaware they'd been the center of a war over imaginary rules. I picked up my cold coffee and smiled. 3 weeks later, 2 letters arrived in my mailbox. The first, from the district attorney. Linda Hale, pled no contest to filing a false report and harassment. Sentence, 6 months probation, 100 hours of community service, and fines totaling $13,000. The second, from the new Birchwood Commons board. A formal apology. Turns out, Linda had been siphoning HOA funds for years, nearly $50,000 misused under her leadership. The new board was cleaning house. I set the letters aside and stepped onto the porch. The sun hung low, gold light spilling over the pastures. My horses lifted their heads briefly before returning to their grazing. They didn't care about HOA politics. They just enjoyed their freedom. And maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes, the best way to deal with a bully isn't to fight them. It's to let them climb so high on their own arrogance that gravity does the rest. Linda Hale swung at a ranch owner and hit her boss's boss instead. Power abused always finds its price. For more cinematic stories like this, make sure to subscribe.